A Pennsylvania home burst into flames, leaving a mom and her teenage daughter trapped inside. But only one made it out alive. As investigators worked the case, they learned the fire was set intentionally, allegedly by someone in the victim's family.
I think there's no question he intended to set the fire. The second question, although I don't think it's going to matter to a jury of his peers, is whether or not when he did that, he was aware that his daughter was in the house.
Thanks for joining us on Law&Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner. According to police, a man poured a 5-gallon can of gasoline within the home before setting it on fire. And the alleged arsonist is now behind bars after his daughter died in the flames. Over the weekend, several 911 calls came in that a home was on fire in a Pittsburgh suburb. According to court documents, when fire crews and first responders arrived on scene, flames were bursting out of the home. But what was even scarier is 2 people were trapped inside, 19-year-old Brian Shelleby and her mom. Lakyn's mom was able to escape the flames engulfing their home. Firefighters tried to get Lakyn out. When they were able to get inside hoping to rescue her, she was unresponsive. Firefighters said that she suffered from heavy smoke inhalation, and while she was transferred to a local hospital for treatment, the 19-year-old passed away. Detectives spoke with her mom, who told them the fire was started intentionally, and she was able to tell them who that person was, Lakyn's own dad, Brian. But why? Well, it seemed detectives would soon learn the motive. According to the probable cause affidavit, Lakyn's mom and dad were seemingly on the rocks. Lakyn's mom reportedly told Brian he could no longer stay at the home because they were separated. And that seemed to really drive him over the edge. He allegedly threatened he was going to burn down the house, all because he couldn't stay there anymore. Soon after telling Brian this, Lakyn's mom told detectives that she heard the sounds of what seemed like a liquid being poured. She heard the noise coming from the garage while she was in the kitchen. But then she reportedly saw Brian pouring the gasoline as he came up the stairs and continued pouring it all over the first floor too. Lakyn's mom said she screamed for her daughter to get out of the house. She said Lakyn responded to her, so she ran out. But as she was running out, that's when the house exploded into flames. Brian didn't get very far. He didn't even really try to flee. According to police, they found him on scene and took him to the police department to find out more about what happened. According to detectives, he was advised of his Fifth Amendment rights, which he waived, and he allegedly confessed to causing the fire and subsequent explosion. According to his probable cause affidavit, he told detectives he just wanted to talk to his wife to convince her to stay at the couple's home. When she told him she didn't want him at the house and told him to leave, Brian allegedly went to the garage, grabbed a 5-gallon gas can full of gasoline. He allegedly poured half of the can in the basement and garage and the other half on the steps of the first floor through the living and dining room, then the kitchen, and back down the stairs toward the garage. He allegedly admitted after he went through the garage, he threw the gas can out to the driveway, and that's when the house exploded into flames. While Brian allegedly admitted he intentionally poured the gasoline to burn the house down, what the document doesn't say is what was his reaction to the fire killing his daughter. Lakyn's mom also had to be rushed to the hospital, but police say she is in stable condition. Several members of the community have spoken out on social media about Lakyn's tragic death. Neighbors say that they remember the 19-year-old as motivated and outgoing. She had a promising life ahead of her. She was in her sophomore year at the University of Pittsburgh. She was reportedly an active saxophone player, and she loved animals. And now her home, which was likely a safe haven for her, now flowers and a memorial grow instead. At a local prayer service, many people came together to show their respects. One classmate told WPXI News she was so smart and she could kick down the doors with her charisma. There was really no one else with her attitude. Another said, "I just hope she knows how much she was loved." One of her childhood friends told the news outlet, "I wish I had an attitude like hers, where I could walk into a room and people could just feel I'm a good person. It's wonderful to see so many people come out and support someone, especially on such short notice." Those sentiments echoed on social media as many of Lakyn's friends made tributes to her life. Now, as for her dad, Brian, he was taken to jail and charged with criminal homicide, aggravated arson, arson endangering persons, arson endangering property, plus causing or risking catastrophe. I'm joined now by Law&Crime legal analyst Julie Rindelman. Julie, always great to see you. What's your reaction to this case? Have you ever seen anything like it before?
I don't think in the Law&Crime stratosphere we're ever surprised by anything we hear, but every case has its own unique set of facts, and this one is quite heartbreaking because now you have a father that potentially is going to go to jail for the rest of his life. And he has not only lost the wife who clearly will not be with him anymore, but has lost his 19-year-old child due to his horrific, thoughtless, angry acts.
Normally, when we see a case like this, we see a suspect who denies that he was involved, doesn't take accountability or anything like that. But in this case, are you surprised that he admitted to intentionally setting this fire? And it's also hard for me to believe he didn't know that his daughter was at home at the time that this fire was set ablaze.
It's a great question. I think people admit to things all the time. I think we're always surprised. This is an individual that actually, I believe, stayed at the scene and actually was begging people to help in terms of helping his daughter. The question becomes, I think there's no question he intended to set the fire. The second question, although I don't think it's going to matter to a jury of his peers, is whether or not when he did that, he was aware that his daughter was in the house. Honestly, from just being a mother myself, I hope to God he didn't know that she was there. But I don't think it changes the trajectory of what's going to happen in terms of what a future sentence is going to look like.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you how important really is intent in this case when you have a teenage girl who lost her life, a mother who has some injuries now, but thankfully she's in stable condition. But in terms of intent overall, even though he admitted to allegedly being intentional in setting the fire, does that really matter when it comes to this case going through the court system?
So specifically in New York and many other jurisdictions, there is felony murder. So it means that when someone commits a felony intentionally, any result of that, meaning if someone dies as a result of it, it's considered murder. It doesn't really matter whether or not you intended to kill the individual. And I'm guessing, and I'm not clear at the law in terms of Pennsylvania, but I'm guessing they have a similar law. Look, the intentionality of setting a fire, keep in mind, he didn't just light the bottom floor on fire. He took out, lighter fluid gasoline and lit both floors, if I remember correctly, to make sure they were saturated and then set on fire. So there was clear intention to destroy this house, which is a home that, I guess not him, but his wife and child had lived in. And you can't really get more serious and violent than that.
And what are your thoughts overall on this motive that authorities are alleging, where he was saying, well, he actually admitted to authorities allegedly that he did this because his wife wouldn't let him back in the house after they had been separated? I mean, it feels like we're seeing a number of cases, Julie, where a lot of people have this very visceral reaction to not being accepted by their romantic partner anymore. I've had a case that I was covering this week about a shooting, and this case where you have an arson, and it just seems like there's this visceral reaction to what could have initially have been like a domestic violence case. Not that that makes it any better, but what are your thoughts overall on this motive that authorities are alleging?
Well, I think the interesting thing that we don't know yet is what the backstory is between their relationship. I'm going to guess that the reason he wasn't allowed in the house was potentially because that there had been a history. I mean, obviously, we don't know definitively, but it would be unusual that someone would act so violently for the first time in setting a house on fire. So I think there's probably going to be a backstory in terms of what their relationship was that led her to not want him in the house in the first place. I hate to always talk about mental health, drugs, alcohol, because I'm not making an excuse, but I do think that that's going to be a factor also that the defense considered. Is this someone with a mental health history? Is this someone with alcohol, drug issues? All of these things are going to be items that defense is going to look at in terms of, is there any mitigation they can find in this case?
Are you surprised that he wasn't charged with attempted murder when it comes specifically to his wife, since his wife did escape the fire?
Keep in mind, we don't necessarily know all of the charges yet. And so it is very possible that we're going to hear additional charges. At the end of the day, keep in mind, the most serious charge is regarding the death of his child and the arson. But it wouldn't shock me if we see additional charges in regards to his wife as well.
Because we see it so many times, right? Initial charges here and then more charges are later added on, especially when it goes through the grand jury process too. And I can't even imagine what the family of Lakyn's family pretty much feels right now, especially the mom specifically, where she told detectives she heard the gasoline being poured and then she saw her estranged husband allegedly doing it. And, when the time came or when the time comes to possibly prepare for trial, what is that process like when you do have a living victim, but then in the same scenario, you have another victim too, the other victim's daughter, and it's just this horrible, terrible, tragic process. But what is it like if you were to have to prep her for a trial if she were to take the stand for the prosecution?
So I think it's incredibly difficult. Keep in mind, I'm sure from the mother's perspective, there's incredible guilt for what transpired. Not that there should be, but I think inevitably a mother, particularly in it, and if there is a domestic violence situation, tends to believe that somehow they are responsible for the acts of somebody else. And so I think that is an incredibly difficult thing that she's going to be having to deal with, separate and apart from the trial. And keep in mind, a trial is not a foregone conclusion. There are many cases that we deal with that we see pleas. And some might say to themselves, this would be the perfect case for him to take responsibility, to avoid putting his wife, his family, his loved ones, the loved ones of his daughter, through the whole process of having to go to trial, to be in front of a jury, and having to relive this absolutely horrific set of events.
Absolutely. And do you see that possibly happening, especially in a case like this, or do you see it making it all the way to trial? I mean, we just never know. It's so early and it's so fresh right now, but what are your thoughts?
It's anyone's guess. Look, maybe the fact that he confessed is a sign that he is willing to take responsibility even in a courtroom. But I think we both know that there are plenty of individuals that confess initially and then either later deny that they confessed, or say that they were under the influence when they confessed, or that they say they're confessing to one thing, but they're not confessing to something that in this case, potentially the intent to cause the death of his daughter.
And what do you think a case like this, what type of message it sends to people who want to leave their relationship? And, we always kind of see this, why don't they leave? Why don't they file for divorce? And then we see a case like this where the wife just wanted to be separated from her husband. She didn't want him in the house. Then this happens. But what do you think this overall sends to message, or what overall message do you think that this might send to other people who might be in similar situations?
I mean, I think it's a terrifying message to be sent. And I think we talk about this all the time when it comes to orders of protection. We have individuals that seek orders of protection, and they are terrified of the individual. The order of protection is literally a piece of paper, and so if someone wants to commit a crime, they're going to do it. And a paper is not often going to stop them from doing it. I think, look, one of the ways that the prosecution can best handle this is holding him fully responsible in regards to the maximum sentence. And could that be a deterrence for those in the future? Maybe. Unfortunately, I don't think it will have an impact on any future decisions of future defendants to commit the same crimes.
And what do you see the defense kind of coming back with if this case were to go all the way through the trial setting? Do they have really any type of defense to work with here?
Again, a good question. I think we go back to the issue of one, was his intent just to set fire to the home? I'm not sure that that's going to get him a long way. It might be some level of mitigation to explain why it was that he would have done it. If he thought, or if he didn't think his daughter was in the house and just wanted to set fire to the house, but not to cause injury to anyone. And I also think, again, we go back to the issue of, is there a mental health issue? Is there a drug, alcohol issue? Is there things in his past that might give at least mitigation to cut off some of the time that he will have to spend in jail?
And it looks like either way, he might be spending a lot of time in jail or in prison eventually down the line, because we do know that he is being held with no bond. Julie Rendelman, I want to thank you so much for your time and your insight into this case. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Online records show Brian Shelleby was denied bail. He's scheduled to return to court on September 26th for a preliminary hearing. Thanks so much for joining us here on Law and Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner.